FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. It's Kerry, Lutz. It's Monday. You know what that means. Manipulation Mondays with Andrew Hoffman. Andy, how are you?
Oh, fantastic as usual. You?
Doing well. Beautiful day here and no rain on the horizon, but lots of thunderstorms on the economic horizon, aren't there?
Yeah. I mean, where do we want to start first, guy? We can do our east to west.
Well, it's almost 1 o'clock here, which means the mail should be here shortly. And you mentioned a little tidbit about the United States Postal Service.
Yeah, it was just a coincidence that as we were calling, this came out on Zero Hedge, $47 billion in losses in the past decade and counting and getting worse. And again, this brings me back to what we were talking about last week, or I was writing about, I can't remember where, about the military. I mean, not only are we imperialistic and we want to take over everyone's oil, but it's become the largest business in America, the military. It's one of the biggest employers. And so whether we want war or not, we can't fire the army. We can't stop building bombs because there's just too many jobs involved. And of course, the problem with those jobs is that they are counterproductive. They not only cost us money just because taxpayer has to pay for them, but they cause so much damage that it costs us even more down the road when we're bombing everyone else. So the post office is a perfect example of the same kind of thing. Whereas the post office is not damaging the nation by being around, it's costing a tremendous amount. And as you know, government employees now make more than private employees. So if you fire these people who are almost the equivalent of manufacturing workers because the government so overexorbitantly pays them, including benefits, you'd have even more people that were hitting the poverty line that would need entitlements. So again, remember they didn't get rid of Saturday delivery because God forbid they'd have 1 day less of pay. It's almost like this colossus is turning into the military postal complex.
Yeah, the postal non-industrial complex. And,
right.
When I was in the printing business, we had messengers in New York City, and they were paid about $12 an hour. And this was back in, the 90s. And, they were low skill, low educated guys. But one of them once said to me, a mailman is just an overpaid messenger. And that definitely stuck. And, that's what it comes down to. Had the same skills. It's just they had a better union because we didn't have any unions, and better pension, medical benefits, although we did have medical benefits, and that's what it came down to. And what you were saying about the military reminded me of a book by John T. Flynn written during World War II called As We Go Marching, and basically it was about the U.S.'s march to fascism in much the same way that it happened in Europe prior to World War II. And when you have this professional standing army and you're shipping off like young men to go there on a regular basis, and then you're constantly coming up with new and better weapon systems. And then economically, when the government is such a big part of the economy, you can't help but drift into fascism. And that is where we're at now.
Exactly. In every way, the government has crowded out the economy. It's crowded out the corporate lending. It's crowding out the actual jobs. And again, here I'm looking on this website, starting salary of U.S. Postals, $51,000 a year. And of course, that includes benefits. Benefits, as we know, are mythical unicorns. No one gets benefits anymore except government workers. And $51,000 a year, without doing the math, I'm guessing, is more than 70% of all the people in the entire country. Probably more than 70%, like 80%. And again, as you said, it's a job that not only is as unskilled as it comes, but it's unnecessary. If they got rid of if you wanted to have an efficient system in this country, you'd just close the post office entirely. If someone actually wanted to send mail, mail, they could send it through FedEx or UPS. They'll create mail services for Christmas cards and the few things that need to be sent in the mail, and it would get rid of all that spam that's going out over the through the mail every day, which is 90% of what we get. But that's impossible. You can't fire people making $51,000 and then have them compete for jobs with 55-year-old people trying to retire because they have no savings at McDonald's. I mean, it just can't do it.
Nope. And it would have to be some type of phase out over 3 years and, or 5 years. You just can't do it, or you'd have to sell it off. I think they just sold off the postal system in the UK, if I'm not mistaken. So it can be done if the political will is there.
What'd they sell it for? $1? Who would buy it?
It was like with some Goldman Sachs or some kind of Wall Street deal, or the equivalent of a Wall Street deal, not necessarily Goldman Sachs involved.
And it's sad. Again, there's nothing against mailmen, letter carriers. The fact is that when the government and the military become the two largest employers in a country, and both of those jobs are overpaid, and both of those jobs are unproductive. In the case of the military, they're counterproductive. You have a system where the government has to get more powerful because they have to either hire you or give you entitlements. And they have crowded out all of the manufacturing jobs. They've allowed them to offshore. We've also had, of course, natural progression of the world where the Eastern Hemisphere was going to take the jobs anyway. We just helped them get them faster. And so when you have a collapsing economy worldwide and no jobs to speak of anywhere, it's a very lethal combination for money printing and fascism.
Yeah. Oh, so true. So sad and so unnecessary. But, this is what happens with government jobs. Like you said, they crowd out and winds up hurting everybody. Even the government employees eventually get hurt, right?
Well, eventually they're going to have to cut down. I mean, either that or just keep printing more money to pay people in different ways. Either you pay them food stamps or you pay them as a postal worker. But I think we looked into how many people are employed at the post office. I mean, we're talking about six figures, like 100,000+ people. And I can imagine how many are on the Department of Defense payroll and all the contractors that get business because of it. And that's just two areas. I mean, there's many other areas that are just like that, which have become too big to fail.
Yeah, and too important not to bail, right?
Well, not important, but but too important in terms of all the jobs that would be lost. I mean, I guess they consider the military as so important, but 95% of what the military does is not important. We're in 150 countries doing who knows what, spending money. All these people that go over there. I feel bad. I have friends and relatives that are in the military, and everyone always likes to believe everyone in the military is there for the right reasons. But a lot of them are there just because they can't get a job, or because they can get cheap job training, which the taxpayer pays for. And unfortunately, some of them are duped into believing that going to Iraq is a good idea. There's very little the military has ever done that's positive. It's just, you get such hype about the few times where it was considered a good thing, like when they bombed Pearl Harbor, you joined. But for the most part, if you got rid of pretty much all the military in the world, you'd have a far better place.
Yep. And a happier place, too. I mean, before World War I, you have to remember, we didn't really have a standing army, didn't. That's why.
We didn't have missionaries, mercenaries. We didn't have full-time politicians and full-time army. People just did what they needed to do when it was called upon.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's really important to understand this, that, hey, we didn't have an income tax either before World War I. Roads still got built. We still had schools, everything, everything seemed to still happen. And the country economically was growing way faster than it did after World War I, after the Federal Reserve, after the income tax. But hey, we know that debate. We've had it numerous times, and yet so many people still don't want to believe it. But getting to the main crux here, gold manipulation, the more things change, the more they stay the same, huh?
Right. And I'm only bringing it up a little more this particular week because it's becoming quite evident to me. Again, 10 years ago, I said in my mind, each day worse than the last. And, to believe that 10 years from now and how many thousands of trading days, it actually is true that they're getting more and more blatant. I mean, you're seeing all these lawsuits everywhere now between the London, the silver fix and the gold fix and the CME, and now the the senators are going to grill J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs personally about their commodities trading. I mean, all the issues with the ETFs and all the naked shorting across the board. But, I put out a piece. I guess there's been some debate lately about the topic, and I'm not even sure why there's a debate at all, because unless, you're on the inside and you have a reason for, to not say the truth, I'm not sure how the evidence can point otherwise. Like, for instance, I've talked forever. I wrote about this years and years ago about what I call Sunday night sentiment attacks, which means either again, Sunday night, we're talking about the thinnest time of the global trading day. The West is still in their weekend. The East is barely waking up. And again, Eastern paper trading is not a big significant thing over there. But as soon as those thin paper platforms open, gold is either smashed down, or if it tries to go up, it immediately is capped by what I call a cartel herald algorithm and taken right back down. And you go back to pretty much last April with the big attacks after Obama had his closed door meeting with the too big to fail banks. And since then, we've had 59 straight Sunday night sentiment attacks, including last night. 59 straight. Okay. And I did the math because people, use the term Six Sigma event, which means something that theoretically should never happen, especially in financial markets. Well, the odds, I looked it up, the odds of a Six Sigma event, meaning 6 standard deviations from the norm, are 1 in 500 billion. Okay? Do you know what the odds of 59 straight Sunday night attacks, assuming it's a 50-50 chance every Sunday night, whether it goes up or down?
What are the odds?
Okay, 1 in 500 billion for a 6 Sigma event, 1 in 570 quadrillion for to have 59 straight same outcomes.
Wow.
So, and again, the funny thing is, that includes the 30 Sundays we've had this year. And gold is the best performing asset class in the world this year. And yet it's been down every single Sunday night of the year. So what does that tell you? And the same goes for, I'm at 10 o'clock a.m. If I did the math, you'd see the same thing every day. That's when the physical markets close. Same goes for, our new thing that we talked about just 2 weeks ago, the new Hail Mary trade, where the Fed ironically is now trying to push interest rates up because they fear what we call the most damning proof yet of QE failure, which is falling rates amidst a so-called recovery. And they've tried it 5 or 6 times already today, and they're failing again. And interest rates are going down again because the whole world knows that we're going to be going into QE on a worldwide basis permanently, and that everyone's going to know it soon. And that's what we're going to talk about next.
Right. When we return on the Financial Survival Network.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Every day, the Financial Survival Network reaches tens of thousands of listeners and would like to reach thousands more. By adding a video channel and more show hosts, we think we can make that happen. But we need your help. If you're a regular listener of FSN and would like to help, please go to clubfsn.com to donate monthly from $1 to $100. The choice is yours, but every bit counts. There are premiums available for you, but the biggest one by far is you helping FSN get the message out to your friends and family to be prepared, hopeful, and ready. That's what FSN is all about, and that's why you listen. So go to clubfsn.com and help us get the word out before it's too late.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
And we are back. We're with Andrew Hoffman. It is Manipulation Monday. And so worldwide QE, can't hardly wait for that. Has it started, or is it starting, or has it been going on all along, Andy?
Well, it's been going on in varying degrees. And look, we still have QE here right now. Look at Abenomics. The Europeans have negative interest rates. And of course, they have their ongoing off-balance sheet swap agreements with the Fed, which is a form of QE, which gets around, some of their rules against some of those kind of things. And of course, you never know what's going on with China until, bam, you find out a week ago they created something called the Pledged Supplemental Lending Program, which sounds a lot like TARP in a lot of the other U.S. terms. And it turns out that it's a form of QE to bail out all these private builders. So, they pretty much realized, as you said, they had 1 or 2 defaults and realized we're never letting this happen again. So they've just entered into that QE to infinity stage. And again, we already know the Chinese have printed more money than all the central banks combined before this.
Yeah.
But the real tests going forward are going to be, the real catalyst for gold breaking away from the cartel and, quite frankly, hell breaking loose is when Janet Yellen is forced to admit it. But before she does, you're going to see everyone else do it. Look, we wrote about Draghi's reckoning day back earlier in the year, and he certainly had it when he went to negative interest rates 2 months ago. But now he's promised this $1 trillion QE. And if you look at what's going on in the Europe economy, it's never been worse. Italy just unexpectedly went into triple dip recession with its record youth unemployment rate. And now they're talking about a potential bailout of Italy. If you talk about France is beyond, I mean, they're the worst economy in all of Europe now. And, that's up there in the world of the Portugals and Greece's. And of course, now they're saying that Germany's second quarter GDP number is going to be negative as well. So the calls for that $1 trillion QE are going to get louder and louder, especially now that their stock markets are not being supported as like they were. So I would be shocked if you don't see something in the next 3 months where they outright, whether the Bundesbank agrees with it or not, say it doesn't matter, we're going into our QE and we'll call it whatever we call it. And then you're going to have, remember, Abenomics, okay? Abenomics started in April 2013 with the goal of doubling the money supply within 2 years. Well, this quarter, it turns out they're about to announce about a 6.5% GDP plunge, and inflation there is at like multi-year, if not multi-decade highs, as everything's falling apart there. So we're within 6 months of them having to decide if they're going to double up on Abenomics or if they're going to give up on it and let interest rates surge. So I think, you have those two big events coming within very short amount of time. And then, of course, there's Yellen's last stand. And if she loses hold of any of these markets, if the PPT can't keep the stocks up, if the high yield bonds keep having record outflows, if interest rates keep plunging into oblivion, despite the so-called recovery, you may well have her talking by the end of the year about reversing tapering or having a completely and utterly indefinite time frame for raising interest rates.
Hey, can Japan afford to give up Abenomics realistically?
Well, ironically, it's the best thing that any country could do. But when you're that far into the game, again, it's a Ponzi scheme. You can't stop. They can't say now,
Exactly.
Okay, we decided it's the wrong thing. We're going to turn around and stop it. Now they have to go exponential. And that's when you see the end of Ponzi schemes, when they're forced to go exponential.
Exactly. That's my point, right? They can't. It's too far. They're too far in. They can't do it.
I can't emphasize enough over the years, and you hear it less and less now, by the way. There are people like Peter Schiff's a perfect example. He's got everything right. No one could get it more right than anyone else. But he would always like to kind of end things with but if we do this, things could improve. And I realized that at one point he was running for Senate, so that's part of how you talk. But he knows very well. It's, the only way things will ever improve is if the whole system crashes, which is what he's saying. You're not going to have if we just make some policy adjustments, we can get through this without crash. No, it's crashing. Mm-hmm. It's crashing. We will rise from the ashes once it crashes. But the only way that we get through this is when the debt is repudiated and you have the painful retrenching, which hopefully doesn't, cause, as I wrote the other day, the ultimate end game of World War III. Hopefully it's just financial and economic. But I suspect, based on what we're seeing around the world and based on history, that it's going to be the former.
Yeah, very possible. Very possible. You just don't know if the sociopaths are going to have their way or not. You just don't know.
Yeah, and it's not even so much about egos. I mean, you got egos in the Obama administration and in Europe, you name it. But, I mean, these are real issues that go back to the Arab Spring caused by inflation from money printing that gets exported around the world. I mean, that's why we're having so many conflicts right now. And some of the conflicts are hot wars like in Ukraine, and some of them are, social unrest like in Argentina or Brazil. I mean, yes, Brazil, one of the BRICS. They're on the verge of it in India at any given point. And by the way, has anyone noticed the rupee has started to plunge again? These are all issues that cannot be reversed, and they're going to have to be addressed with as the currencies get weaker and inflation gets stronger, and to hope to believe that it's going to be done so without bloodshed and without revolution is extremely naive. But we can only hope. Again, we buy our gold and silver and all the other things we do because we're hoping for the best, but praying, but assuming the worst.
Yeah, you always got to prepare for the worst. Always prepare for the downside, and hope for the best. Right?
Yeah. When it comes to financial markets, that's the converse. Like I wrote this article today called the United States Misery Pictorial, and again, every single thing you look at right now, for a while, all those overvaluations of stocks and bonds, they passed the 2007 highs. That's incredible. Now they're all passing the 2000 highs. No matter what you're talking about, these leveraged loans, the value, the PEs, the sentiment, the technicals, one by one, we're getting to a point where without any retail participation, you're at the all-time high valuations of both stocks and bonds. And again, it's very ominous that you're seeing the largest streak of high yield outflows ever. I think it's $17 billion in the last 3 weeks. I mean, people are starting to get fearful that even the powers that be are not going to be able to hold up the low end, the weak links on the chain. And eventually they're going to be fearful of even the high end, the Dow Jones propaganda average, which is when you're going to really start to see the QE to infinity show up overtly.
Yeah. At some point, real estate in Manhattan, if you look at that, it's just shocking what's going on there at all levels, Andy. I mean, the most basic middle-class apartment is a couple $1 million,
Yeah, well, this is a perfect example of the high net worth people in the world. America will call it money laundering and attempt to arrest them and any bank that deals with them. But really, it's just people taking these worthless dollars and euros and buying. It's no different than buying a Picasso painting. They figure New York is one of the the most valuable addresses on earth, so they're just buying every piece of property they can. Oh, Picasso is one of the most famous painters. Buy every Picasso and pay anything for it. And of course, they would be buying the most valuable wealth protection asset, gold and silver, if it weren't being held down 24/7 to the point where we're going to see an utter collapse in production. And I mean, I've talked about this for some time. My friend Steve St. Angelo at SRS Rocco put out another great piece last week showing how the average yield, meaning the ore grade, for the top 5 mines in the world, which produce 35% of all the gold, has fallen by 35% in the last decade. It's down to like 1.1 grams per ton, which ain't a lot.
Yeah, that's
one in
nothing.
What is it, 1 in 30,000 parts or something like that.
Yeah.
Diesel consumption has doubled over that period, or it's up 50 or 80%. I can't remember what the number is, and it ain't going to get any better. There's been no exploration. There's been no discoveries. There's now, even if you had the money to discover right now, the rules with the environmental and governments and windfall taxes, and it's impossible. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that gold production, silver production peaked a decade ago and are never coming back. And I mean never, ever, ever, ever. Not just in our lifetimes, ever. You will never see the levels of gold production from a decade ago.
Yeah. No, it's been a multi-decade trend here.
Yeah, I mean, just look, I wrote about South Africa's thing about a year ago. I mean, it's just shocking. Production's down 80% over 30, 40 years. U.S. and Canadian gold and silver production. I think it was silver I did that chart on, where both of them are down 50 or 70% production in the last 5 or 7 years. And there's been no discoveries and no exploration thanks to the cartel destroying the exploration industry. So it's only going to go down. It's going to do exactly what South Africa did. It's going to get more expensive and production will just plunge and plunge and plunge. And then eventually when the cartel is broken and the prices go up and the whole world becomes aware of gold and silver as money, the governments will do exactly what Chavez did in Venezuela with PDVSA. The governments will take all the mines and all the miners or windfall profit tax them. And the point is, there's going to be no way to win in that business. And I'm not even talking about mining shares. If you want to own mining shares, do whatever you want. Maybe you'll get lucky. But I'm talking about the business of mining. I worked in it for 5 years. I've seen many mines. I've watched dozens and dozens of companies go out of business or have almost no funding, so they're barely a shell of themselves. And again, you're talking about the perfect storm of exploding demand when there's going to be no supply to supply it.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's see, we've got a few other items here on our list, but I guess that really kind of concludes for this week. So you find Andy's work at milesfranklin.com. Sign up for his daily missive as well as Bill Halter's, and go over to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Sign up for our newsletter. Got one coming out very shortly. And you'll also get the first 5 chapters of my book gratis. Andy, we will talk with you again next Monday. Be well.
Looking forward to it. Thanks.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.